Things are getting crazy. Um, so a couple of days ago, I came upon a story, and instead of using somebody's name for clicks, I'm just going to talk about the story in general. So there is this body positivity spokesperson, we'll say, who has appeared on multiple magazine covers and has been all about accept my body, big bodies are beautiful, all of that stuff, right? Against fat shaming and all this stuff. And I'm not saying that people should be bullied for their weight, but it becomes a problem when people say diets are toxic and if you lose weight, then you're body shaming. So this whole thing has got me to thinking about society, and we really are kind of embracing, well, not all of us, just one half of us, embracing the idea of victim badges, right? It means basically when you identify as one part of a group so that you can get more influence and more attention, especially on social media. So, anyway, this person, who I won't name, but most people probably already know who I'm talking about. But like I said, I'm not here for clout using other people's names. Using the idea that they are anorexic. Now, this person is very much overweight. You can use the term obese. And saying that they are anorexic, first of all, we can all kind of see through this. I'm trying to be careful with my words here, obviously, right? And they're trying to get themselves out of irrelevancy, essentially. Now, everybody has responded accordingly. They said, how dare you use this idea of you being anorexic when you're not, because anorexic people suffer. It's a really bad disease and condition, whatever you want to call it. And to use that to try and get fame or shed light on yourself is just ridiculous. So, of course, what she has done is, I pretty much, I try to use they, but we know it's a she. What she has done is said that she's actually challenging social norms. So this whole idea now that whenever they get in trouble, they use the idea of progress. It's progressive to think this way, and if you don't, then you are, if you're stuck back into the Middle Ages, right? The archaic way of thinking. And that's how this whole thing works. Is if you don't like what they're promoting, then you are just bad. You're not virtuous and all of this stuff. And this is the idea of postmodernism, right? They challenge the idea of objectivity. They say there is no truth and there is no good or evil. Now, atheists have said that there's no good or evil. It's all dependent on what your culture is like and all of this stuff. But postmodernism says there isn't the truth. There is your truth, which I find kind of interesting because they don't believe in inherent good and evil, yet if somebody goes against their ideology or their agenda, all of a sudden they're the worst person in the world. So postmodernism doesn't count when you're talking about conservatives or anything like that, obviously. But yeah, this whole idea of victim badges, and I'm not going to call them out. We know the type of things that, all these labels and what you identify as. I mean, there's a dozen of them. From able-bodied to, like I said, I'm not gonna start going down that road. Anyways, like I said, and the thing about this is I'm not scared of being canceled or anything like that. I'm trying to be respectful as possible, even though I disagree with them. The thing is I'm a believer in God, and I believe that we aren't who we are because of our temptations. We are who we are because of us overcoming said temptations. And I have no problem calling out the BS, is which what I'm doing. But as a conservative, you have to be careful on platforms like this, because I think that if you can convey a message without using buzzwords and keywords and still keep it online, it's better than to say those things and in just 2 videos get shut down and not have a voice at all. So we all need to, especially conservatives, we need to be aware of the type of language we use and all that stuff. So, but anyways, this idea of victim badges, I was, of course, most of you know that I was in the military, and there was a weird trend that I started to see when I was a private, when I had just gone into the military. And when we had gotten to our units, all of these guys were saying, oh, I went to this basic training and it was the hardest. I went to Fort Knox. They called it the School of Hard Knocks. But there were people who went to, what was it? Anyways, there's a whole bunch, like Fort Jackson, Fort Sill, a whole bunch of basic training. And for some reason, I can't remember that, not Fort Bragg, but the it starts with a B. Anyways, I'm having a brain fart. But anyways, they reveled in the fact that they were the ones who suffered the most. Benning, George, what am I talking? Benning. They call themselves the Benning Boys, and Fort Benning, Georgia. And so the Benning Boys would be like, oh, our basic training was the worst, and I endured the hardest. And so it was kind of like they were getting points for going through the roughest basic training. And that's kind of like what it was in the military. Oh, you served 1 term, I served 3 terms to Iraq, or 4 tours to Iraq, stuff like that. And so I started seeing this trend back in 2007 when I was in. But now society is starting to adopt this as well. I guess it's always kind of been loosely in our nature to, show people, hey, look, I've done this. But I find it really eerie the way that the leftist culture is doing it. But anyways, this hardship thing is now evolving into the idea that if you're not a part of this hardship, if you don't have this certain victim badge, then you can't comment on social media about it. I've seen this, people saying, oh, if you're not bi, then you can't talk about bi issues. Or why are we letting somebody, a straight white male, talk about issues that they have no experience with? And I can understand the idea of certain things that they're talking about when in relation to experience. But when you're talking about society as a whole and implementing certain legislation and all of that stuff, you can't tell me that you have to have experience in order to do that. Then again, 2 days ago, I had somebody who said, oh, you don't really need experience to say, just because you were in the military doesn't mean that only military people can speak up about military issues. Somebody can see that and comment on them just from an outsider's point of view. And I agree with that. I understand that. But this whole thing is it's just crazy. Like, they really are trying to silence anybody who has the wrong opinion. So they get these victim badges and then they exclude everybody else from saying, oh, you can't say anything about this because you don't have that badge. It's really kind of weird. For example, in 2015, around 2013, this whole leftist third wave feminism, social justice warrior thing started. And around 2015, I started noticing people start calling themselves bi. And one person I asked, I said, why are you bi? And they're like, well, I kind of had that inclination in the past, but they admitted that it helps them in regards to debates and talking about social issues because they can act as a representative of that group. And it's mind-boggling. This is the way our society is working, and they want everybody to be a part of all these groups so that they can mold society into their agenda. It's, I don't know. Like I said, I'm having a brain fart day, but anyways. But the one thing that I want to leave you with is this whole idea of, have you ever seen beauty pageants? And the way that the eerie way that mothers try and get their daughters or sometimes their sons, especially in sports. Sometimes dads do it with their kids in sports, and they try and get them to go and live vicariously through them, try and live through them in some faded glory attempt to relive their old days, especially when it comes to beauty pageants. Well, now we are starting to see, like, for example, what was it, Hulu or Netflix? It was one of those. It was one of those that had this movie called Transhood. HBO Max, that's what it was. HBO Max had this movie called Transhood, and I believe it's still on there. And it shows these parents goading on their kids to become trans. And in some of these cases, it's clear that these kids just wanted to try something for a little bit when they're like 5 or 4, and that was it, and then they were over it. But because the parents received applause and praise and you're so brave or your kid's so brave on these social media sites, they are inclined to keep up this charade. I think we have to be really careful with how we treat our kids. And we need to make sure that our kids see the right things and don't develop too quickly. It appears that Hollywood, politicians, and all of these celebrities, they want kids to grow up fast. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I think that some of these new legislation, these laws and all of this, is an attempt to try and lower the consent law, whether it's to pick their gender, or even perhaps down the line, they absolutely deny this, but I think it's a possibility that they are trying to lower the age of consent law for kids. First, they'll do it from 18 to 16 or whatever. But we need to be really careful, and we need to protect our children to make sure that they don't grow up too fast. I mean, we all have seen or talked to somebody who has undergone horror stories as a child, and now as a result, they themselves are suffering. The biggest thing that I'm passionate about, besides my faith, is making sure that our kids are safe and making sure that they have a chance to grow up as a child. I was born in '86, and I grew up in the '90s, and I think that was one of the best times to grow up as a child. I think we need to protect childhood, and we need to make it so that these kids are able to experience, growing up, and they're not forced into this stuff, especially not give them into the hands of these adults who want to mistreat them. Anyways, this is already a long video. Sorry for the awkward pauses. Like I said, whatever. But anyways, also, again, thank you for the 1,000 subscribers. Subscribe if you've made it this far, and I'll talk to you in another video. Bye.